Welcome to LA Chess Club Intermediate class once again. Your teacher this morning, National Master Ruben on Dungan. And if you have time, check my webpage as well, www.discoverchess.com. That's mine. So, if you want to find out more about me, that's my webpage. This morning, I would like to present a game between me and National Master Eric Mui, several times state champion of Hawaii. Very strong player, and this game was played in September of 2002. That's a while back, about 14 years ago. But you see, the game here is still reflect the current affair of this opening. The game is a Bogo Indian, and I was white. And you will notice here, my opening back then is D4. So I played D4. Okay. And here, my opponent played Knight F6. Okay, quite standard. C4, and he played E6, an invitation to the Nimso-Indian defense. If white play Knight C3, we have Bishop B4. Okay, if white play Knight F3, then black has a choice between a Queen's Indian defense or a Bogolyubov Indian defense, or Bogo Indian in short. And the other third option here that is popular at this time is G3. We call it the solid Catalan. Okay, so if you're white here, class, I would like you to pay attention to those three important moves: Knight C3, Knight F3, and G3. Now your question may be, is there any other move here?
Bishop to G5.
Bishop G5 is playable. It's played actually by Nigel Short and some British players, but it could probably transpose in other lines just to confuse your opponent, which is also always good in a tournament, right? You make your opponent think. I like to do that actually. So here, I adopted Knight F3 and said, let's, I don't want to get involved in the theoretical dispute in the Nimso-Indian. And you know, the Nimso-Indian has a very rich history, and it was played almost exclusively by all world champions, former world champions, strong players, grandmasters. Probably one of the strongest opening for black that you could adopt. Michael Adams played this. Sergei Karyakin played this very well. Wesley So, right? And a full bunch of other 2,700 players. So Knight F3, it's a playable move. Develops a piece and say, I don't want to be pinned. However, you can't really prevent black from playing that bishop. The idea is, it's very classical. He developed the knight, and then so a follow-up should be another piece on the king side to facilitate castling early in the game. So what should he play? Well, there's no knight to pin, but never miss a check. Not a bad check, right? It actually throws the ball in white's court. In other words, how do we respond? Because there's several ways. If we play Knight C3, we're back to the Nimso-Indian.
Yeah, Knight D2.
Knight BD2 was played against me by a lot of strong players here in Southern California. This was the choice of most players, Knight BD2. Here, another main line was played, and this is to immediately find out the plan of black bishop on B4. What do you really want to do in there? So let's exchange, because why is the exchange good? Nobody has the dark square bishop, right? So here, bishop D2 was played. However, my opponent played this move, Queen E7, and so that after bishop captures and then queen captures, the queen might become very annoying early on B4. Let's see what's going to happen.
What if you push the pawn to
A3?
And that's what I did. But let's see this variation. So after here, we have an attack on both pawns, and it can be quite tricky on how to proceed from here. Okay? So avoiding that, you were right. I played A3. Declare your intention. Of course, here, black doesn't have an option to withdraw. For example, bishop d6, and the bishop is gone, right? So this is a forced capture. Now the question is, how do we recapture? Anybody?
D2.
Okay, the mechanical approach is you capture with the knight because it develops a piece, right? But the classical approach here is we always remember that the knights belong to c3 and f3, and therefore the correct capture is
The queen.
the king. No. Everybody was suddenly shocked. This guy ruined the theory. The queen has to capture, so the knight still can go to c3. All right, is that clear, class? Now if you have an option to place those knights on f6, c6, f3, and c3, well, place it there, right? Because that's the best way. Now why is that? Because as far as they go towards the center, the more squares they control.
So then why wouldn't it be okay to capture the?
It's okay. There's nothing wrong with capturing with the knight, right? However, as a classical player at that time, okay, now I'm a hyper modern. So I rather want my knight here because one of my plans here, I already started a plan, and that is to play the pawn on d5 advance. The other one is to probably castle here, and so facilitate the arrival of the pawn on d5 and create suddenly an effect in the position early on. So I'm already having plans on what to do, what we call expansion program, right? Immediately in the opening. So here, class, I want to suggest in your own game that you immediately pinpoint or have a plan early on, so that as every move is being played, you add plans to your current plan, right? Add a strategy to your current strategy. In other words, add more ideas to what you already have. So you are always what? Sparkling with ideas in your game. That's a good way to play chess. Always have several ideas, right? So queen capture. He played, now see, the good thing about a3 and plus the queen on d2, there's several ways for us to create disturbance in the position. One of them is the queen side push of the b pawn all the way to the fort, and that will create a queen side play for white. That's one. All right, and so here he said, I cannot castle yet, I have to prevent this idea of queen side play. So he played a5, which is understandable. Okay, after a5, I played very good, knight c3. So now you see a harmony, coordination in white's forces, and that is always the beauty of one's chess game should be. You should play in accordance with harmony and beauty and coordination. After here, black castles. So let's evaluate the position quickly. With regards to the number of men's out and development, it's about equal. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2. The castle is considered a development, so 3. With regards to pawn structure, class, let's determine who has the better contour in the position. Black seems very solid, am I right? White as well seems like very. Now there is one thing that is amiss in the position, that it requires an eagle's eye, okay, to penetrate deeply into the position. Now what is that? It's the castling is probably not the most accurate here for black. Can you believe that? The reason is white's next move gains a tempo. E4 looks very good. However, after, for example, E5, and this is the strategy for black in Nimsu Indian, Queen's Indian, and Nimsu Indian, Queen's Indian, and Bogo Indian structure. After the disappearance of a dark square bishop, remember class, I always mention this. This is Nimzovich strategy. When one of your bishop disappears on the board, the pawn or your soldier have to take their the job of the missing bishop. I mentioned that a lot. So here, after e4, the only good move here is to prevent e5 and to start placing all the pawns on dark square. Hence, e5 or d6 and preparing e5 should be played. Right? So you will see a dark square strategy because of the missing bishop. e4 is probably the best in the position, but here I played instead bringing my queen closer immediately to the vicinity of the castled king and attack this pawn here that is the only undependent piece on black's position.
Queen F4.
Queen F4. That makes the idea of e4 and e5 much stronger, right? It's much stronger now. Because remember, if we just simply play e4 and d6, is d5 playable? e5? It's playable. However, knight d7, there's suddenly an attack on the e5 square that white need to clarify what to do on that e5. So to prepare that idea much more stronger, we place the queen in a very strategical outpost there on f4, hitting on c7, facilitating the e4 e5 advance, which was your idea, much stronger. So d6, right? After d6, see now the arrival of e4. What did we achieve by placing the queen on f4 class? e5 is not possible. You capture, you just recapture, right? And so here, it became a problem on how to stop e5. So he played knight c6. Now, instead of allowing your opponent to play e5 and equalize the game, and probably even better, we have to gain control of that square first before our opponent.
Wait.
Right? And
D5?
e5 is e5 is the correct move. So what did we achieve here? We gained space. What else? With regards to the position, we locked in that bishop on on c8. Correct. It attacks the knight. Correct. And now because we have a light square bishop, the bishop will find a wonderful spot on this diagonal. You know how all this strategy work out in white's favor. Okay, understand that? Any question? So after e5, go ahead, Rita.
So if you're using your pawns on black squares to replace the
Missing bishop? Yes.
doesn't that open up all the white diagonals for the white bishop?
It opens the white diagonal for your bishop. And for me, because I ran out of I got rid of my dark square bishop, it's only right that the pawn takes the job also of my missing bishop. So it works on both camps. But whoever achieved that idea first should be better in the game. Correct? Somebody has to get there first. All right? And so after d5, he captured. I recapture. So now you will see that this pawn on e5, knight d7, of course, we have an attack twice, but it's defended twice as well. Correct? Now this pawn will become a thorn in black's position. It creates a lot of disharmony in his forces, particularly that bishop on c8 that will never find the light of day for a while. And so here suggests a move for white. What is the best continuation here?
D3.
Bishop d3, very good. And the idea is you place the bishop, a very dangerous attack on h7. Now, with the combination of these two, the knight can jump. Black's position is suddenly becoming dangerous. Can you feel it? Yes, I mean, you can't calculate it, but you can sense that something is about to happen here. This looks like very bad for black now. So here in this position, National Master Eric Moore is start thinking for a prolonged period of time. After the arrival of Bishop here, he start feeling uneasy. And he can sense it, and I can sense it, that he's in trouble. I just don't know how to proceed. And so after Bishop D3, the good thing about Bishop D3 class is you keep your opponent wondering, where on earth is this guy going to castle? Right? It's a very flexible move that you're not still showing your card to your opponent. Is he planning to castle queenside and really destroy me on the king side, or he will castle safely on the king side just like me? But here is a very good rule of thumb. When your opponent commit early on a side of the board, and you're not, you're still in the center, you have an option. You want more chances for you, castle on the opposite side. The reason is, whoever arrives to your opponent's shore first, right, will win the game. And opposite side castling is always double edge, right? So whoever arrives on the shore of Normandy first will win the battle, right, of the Second World War. So here, no casualties. Let's send some paratroopers.
Even when the left-hand side of the board is so open without the protection that you have of the...
Very good. Now you will see here, can we castle on the queen side? Really? Let's evaluate the position. Now it looks scary because a5 is already up, and it seems like this is already up as well, and there is some sort of loosening in white's position. But in every rule, there's always an exception. Can he really prove the weakness I have on the queen side? That is very difficult to achieve. For once, you need c6 and b5 to destroy anything there on the path on the queen side. It will require time.
What about pawn to h4, keep him guessing?
Pawn h4. So after bishop, let's see what he played first and see up. So he played rook d8. Very good idea. The reason is
Because he thinks you.
the attack here will be neutralized by a knight on f8. Right? It was Bent Larsen who said, if I have a knight on f8, I'll never get checkmated. That's what he thought. And that's why he was 6-0 against Bobby Fischer in the candidates of 1970. Am I right? 6-0. And then after that, it was Mark Taimanov who scored the same score, 6-0. And after that, Mark Taimanov is never the same again. He was actually castrated by the Russian Federation. How could we lose space like this in the world's arena? Losing, at least score a half point, man. 6-0. But you see, after that drubbing of Bobby Fischer and these two great chess players, top 10 at that time, both of them, they were never the same again. You just lost your desire to live. Your desire to play chess. So, here, very good move, RD8. And after that, I decided I will castle on the queen side. Because this bishop is undependent. The sudden opening, there is a trick. For example, you want to play h4 Mitch, will be met by knight x. And capture. And after capture, queen takes, and we found our bishop
Lost.
hanging. That's the idea. So, even though you have good motives and intention in the position, you always have to watch out for your opponent's threats, captures, and checks. Always have to have an eye for the tactics involved in the position. So, be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but wise.
Pawn is on h2.
You like that? Okay, so let's go back here. I quoted that somewhere, so it sounds good for the moment. So castle, am I right? That's very nice. Be careful how you play chess, not as unwise, but it should be as wise players. Now, after castle, said, okay, my trick never worked. Let me attack this bishop. Double attack. A rook and a knight. Therefore, knight, c5. Now, here is your peer coming in. You said that earlier, you said that the queen side seems like loose and seems like black's forces can easily swarm that side of the board. And your statement probably contains some grain of truth. But here, after the immediate attack, the threat of check, so we have to play bishop to c2, and still we notice that it will require time for black to really conjure up something on the queen side. For example, a4. In order for it to really create something, he has to play a4 and check there, but the check is still not the end of everything for white. I can always sidestep and go to b1, and then after that, what is black's continuation? Nothing much, really.
Would it have been worth
Right?
white moving to a4?
Oh, no.
Not now, but
Yeah. Now,
before the
here, right now our weakness is probably a b3. Now, if you play a4, not only we have b3 as a problem, we now have this b4 as a major problem. The other is minor. This is horrible. Arrival of a knight there is really inviting some kind of disaster that will strike soon in white's position. Okay, so rule of that lesson: never give your opponent squares. Okay, so don't give them squares that they can work. For now, they have nothing. He has nothing to work. But once you give him a square, he will dominate suddenly that side of the board. Now here, wherever your forces are concentrated, you as white concentrated on the king side 1, 2. Do not worry on the other side of the board where your opponent is trying to concentrate his forces. Right? Ignore it. If the threat is not real, ignore it. Concentrate on your own attack, on your own play, on your own continuation, and your own activity. Concentrate on those things. Of course, you have evaluate how strong the attack is, but if not, you just ignore it and say, let me concentrate here and bring more forces fresh in the board. So after bishop c2, he finally brought out his bishop to d7. However, you see here that the bishop will be well placed on c6, but the knight is well placed on c6 as well. And the knight said, I'm not giving you my spot. This is mine. And bishop said, I cannot get out. I can't breathe. How should we do this? Well, we have to reshuffle. But you see, the pieces are stepping on each other's squares again. And it is a sign of lack of coordination. It was Shegbert Tarash who declared that if you have one bad piece in your position, the whole position is bad.
wow.
Very strong words from the German grandmaster. Only one. And that's why it's very important to make sure that all your forces are healthy. Okay? All your men are good.
Well, that makes sense, because when I watch the masters on YouTube or whatever, every one of their pieces is backed up. Nobody's
Yes.
hanging, everybody's in coordination.
Correct. It's very important coordination and harmony in your games. Nobody should be stepping on each other's job. Okay? So after bishop d7, let's see what happened here. h4, which is what we've been wanting to play, we're itching to play it, was actually not the correct continuation here. You know what's best here? I tried to check the computer's analysis. It said, now is the time for bishop takes h7 check.
I was looking at it.
Immediately.
Sure.
And I was, being a human, I was one step behind the computer's mind. Because, to be honest, I cannot see the continuation of the sacrifice.
Knight up.
For example, capture,
Knight.
knight g5 check.
King back, or you want to bring him out. If you bring him out, you're asking for trouble.
Flush him out. King g8 back.
Now queen h4.
Queen h4. Okay. And you were right. So therefore, king back is not the good move. Only here.
Yeah, because
And now
otherwise
h4.
the queen goes up and it's
h4.
mate.
The threat of h5.
And how should white black continue this play?
Push a pawn.
This is already bad. This arrival of this pawn here, check, will bring this king in a discovered attack. So you see, the computer was right. that no matter where the king go, it will spell doom for black's position. So I missed that, and I could honestly say that, you know, I want to make sure of my attack first. So here I played h4 first, and you see the importance of a move that has to play immediately than a move that you have to prepare it. Sometimes it's good to prepare, sometimes it's good to immediately play it. Go ahead, Rita.
But by doing h4, you give black the tempo to block with the pawn structure.
With how?
He
This
can-
one creates a target. h5 is really strong. h6 will probably maybe playable, but again, it still contains a problem. For example, knight e4, and after the exchange, the battery of the bishop and queen here, again, it spells doom in black's position. It's very dangerous. Now, the reason is these guys here are jumbled on one side of the board. They're bottled up in there.
He
They,
removed his knight to F8 when he moved his.
yes, you know why? Why he did not move his knight to f8 is to defend. I believe in the position earlier, it's better to defend than for him to conjure up an attack on my king. The reason is after knight c5, there's no more continuation for black. So it was better if the knight was on f8, creating some sort of assistance to the black monarch. So here, h4 was played. Here we are.
Ruben,
Go ahead.
so do you think at this point black is seeing what you just showed us, that he's done? He's doomed?
Well, it's inevitable. h4 did not throw away the advantage, class. It just delayed
Doomed.
the inevitable, the actual result. It never threw the advantage away. However, I could have made it much more sweeter by immediately sacrificing on h7. Because after here, he does not want to create any weakness. For example, h6, I saw another one instead of knight e4. Leave that knight alone. They're stepping on each other. Bring another man into your attack. And this is much more scarier than the nightmare on Elm Street.
Pause, but
Right.
not like moving one of the pawns like
Like f6.
Yeah, F6. so
f6 is...
Let him take it.
f6 should have been the strongest move earlier when the rook was still on f8,
But,
right?
But white takes the pawn, right? Queen moves.
If
somewhere.
f6, what should we do?
Well, or move up even, but it gives black an opportunity.
Some kind of, here, after queen capture,
Or the queen doesn't even have to capture. Queen could just move.
you see now the attack, discover attack on c7? Maybe, probably the best continuation that black can have. At least he has some sort of counterplay. Now, the pair that Jim has is suddenly evolving, is showing up. Now you see here the softening of the queen side. And that is a good sacrifice, by the way. We call it positional sacrifice, to open lines into your opponent's to your opponent's side of the board. All right?
Wouldn't that nullify your attack? with
Yes,
your
and I
attack?
think that should have why black should have done that. Give a pawn away so that his pieces can start breathing and be a part of the game, than just being sitting, waiting and sitting for something to happen. Right? Do something. So something to learn in your position. Don't wait for your opponent to drop the axe on you. Right? Drum up the position. Do something, even at the cost of sacrificing a pawn or even a piece, so that the rest of your army will become alive and active. All right, class? Any question? Very good. So f6 was probably the best move to just free the pieces. Instead, he played bishop e8. Landing depends on f7, maybe on the light square, but again, the bishop developed and undeveloped. Okay, so that it will open the rook path. What should you do here? Anybody? Any idea? Now,
Knight G5.
now there's several continuation here that are appealing. Maybe bring the other rook here. However, after the check, then if the bishop capture, it lost the diagonal. Or, for example, rook here. I saw something immediately. You can easily blunder here. You don't. Some people, most players don't hesitate to capture with the king. So after here, and suddenly we have to resign. What just happened? It happened a lot in our game that we are reluctant to, but the only move there is the capture with the king. But that brings the rook into play. We check, and I believe here black's position suddenly starts to free itself. The pieces suddenly can check, and then the exchange. Now, if your position is is very passive, what you have to do, and your opponent's attack seems looming in the horizon, you have to exchange pieces and forces as early as you can to neutralize your opponent's attack. Okay, a very good defensive strategy. So by the exchanges, we lost our important commander, the bishop, and the pieces suddenly are needing that missing bishop on c2. So it's not good for white suddenly. It probably still good, playable, but you know, you lost the desire suddenly to counterplay.
What about rook G3?
So rook h1 is not good. I mean rook h3.
And then move it to
G5.
rook G3.
I mean, knight
Yeah, but we analyze it.
Oh.
Yes, rook g3. It could still be played, but now because the number of pieces are diminished, the attack also lost its steam.
knight G5.
Yeah,
C5.
Knight g5. The knight in c5 is missing. There we go. Knight g5. This is ready to jump. The queen is there. The rook is ready to go up.
Right?
We bring the knight to e4. That will be bringing another piece close to the proximity of your opponent's king. And after knight e4, he captured rook takes d1. So here's this idea that I can sense a sense of danger in my position. I need to exchange as many pieces as possible. Rook d8. Now here.
Take with the rook
Why did I take with the rook?
to prevent the knight coming in home.
If I don't take with the rook, what else should I take with?
Nice.
Right? Because this rook, capture of the rook here still dominates the d file. However, he wants to really exchange all the major forces, the rooks, the tanks, so that it diminished the possibility of attack. However, it never really diminished the number of pieces that are pointing to the enemy king. With one defender and 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them attackers on that side of the board, even the disappearance of the rook on the chessboard still creates some kind of attack for white here. So, what should we play? Rook capture.
Then the queen.
Rook capture. Now, if queen takes, what's going to happen if queen?
No, if the queen.
The knight drops. So the knight has to capture. It's a forced capture of the knight. So you see one. Now evaluate for a moment, class. We have two pieces that are in the back rank, opponents. The knight that is hanging, the queen defending it, and we have 4 of our forces pointing on this direction of the board. Can you smell something here?
Ruben,
I smell a rat. Go ahead.
if you had moved the king to b1 at some point, could you have avoided all the exchanges of your rook?
That is a tempo, and it's not needed and demanded by the position to move the king on b1. Actually, the exchanges of major forces helps the king to stay on the center because we are approaching some sort of endgame, and the king is closer to the center of the battle. So king b1 there, although it's playable in most type of position, here it's not demanded or required by the position. And to avoid the exchanges of the rook on the d file is actually giving your opponent the sole possession of that avenue, of that d file. So you don't want that to happen. You're avoiding exchanges, but you're giving him that whole pile. He can conjure up or create something in there. So the exchanges is unavoidable, right? It has to be exchanged. But what my opponent missed here is the next move. And here
The knight on
is, after I play this move, the whole a lot of players stood up from their game and went to our board and checked what kind of nonsense Ruben came up again. Anybody? Knight f6 check. Because after knight f6 checks, what's going to happen?
The pawn takes f6.
He looked at me, look at the position. He said, you must be out of your mind. I'll just capture your horse. It's free.
No, but then the queen can move to to g4.
To where?
Or H7.
No, or the
What is the continuation of that
bishop takes f7.
sacrifice?
Bishop takes f7.
H7 has no continuation either. I just capture it, and after that, there's no other check in the
What
position.
about chain g4?
Who said that? Very good. E takes f6, attacks the queen. And only one move is force. He can only go to f8. Or if he goes d6, there will be a horrible checkmate that will take place. The pawn, which started its career early on by preventing black's e5, has now made its way into the heart of the enemy king. Okay? And now the king is in some sort of a box. So there's only one square for the queen to go after here. Does the sacrifice work? Now, the sacrifice is temporary in nature, and because it's temporary, the advantage we have is temporary. We have to move fast and quick. It has to work. Otherwise, we will be behind in material. Remember, he has 2, 4 pieces. We only have 3 left. But all those 3 are needed in the position. The next move, please.
Bishop takes H7.
Queen g5 check.
Yeah.
The idea is to have an access to this square after your desired sacrifice.
Is h5 good now?
Bishop takes. H5 no longer works. There's no more rooks. Bishop takes H7. You see the check gave us access to H5 if he doesn't capture. Earlier it was here, remember? There's no access to unless you are a horse. So the check brings your queen closer to the proximity of the king for the sacrifice to work. The sacrifice works only if you have access on this H5. Now you see, Ruben, you have a check. If capture, right, what's going to happen? For example,
h5.
you have queen H5 check, but he has a counter check.
Then knight.
But you have knight G5 check, and the king has to leave the defense of the queen. Where, and after here, queen takes, the mate is unavoidable. Have you seen all those? Very deep.
But did he resign right now?
So here, after a lot of minutes spent, now this one is 40 moves in 2 hours, and 1 hour to finish the game. So it's a total of 6-hour game. And this never made it to the first time control. It was done in an hour, this game, against the many-time champion of Hawaii. And after bishop takes h7, he can't capture. Instead, he start using his forces. Bishop a4. And so now, because he did not capture, now see the idea of the importance of the check. We now have access to h5. And the mate is so hard to prevent. Okay, he played some few tricks. Knight b3 check. He said, if I'm going down, I have to go down in style at least. Give me a check. So king b1. start bringing up his forces. You see? If you're not careful here, for example, you suddenly play bishop g6 check. He said, yay! Capture your queen, no more mate. We suddenly lose, right? So be careful on your continuation. The only good move here is
Bishop f5.
blocking bishop f5 check, and it's over. Right? Be careful. So this game is very nice continuation. Finish the game after king f8. Where's the mate? Queen h8 is mate. Now you see, we only let our pieces live, the one that are needed to finish the attack. Okay? I hope you guys like that. We probably have enough time for another one while I'm setting up the board. A quick one, okay?